On Thursday, September 27th, Grenada's Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Keith Mitchell, and the Foreign Affairs Minister, Honorable Peter David, are coming to Brooklyn for a special town hall meeting. All Grenadians and friends of Grenada in the diaspora are invited. Join the discussion on the state of affairs in Grenada. It's from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the auditorium of the Medgar Evers College on 1650 Bedford Avenue. Come, let your voice be heard. Thursday, September 27th, Grenada's Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister in a town hall meeting at Medgar Evers College from 5 p.m.
We'll conquer want and poverty. We'll keep the ever free and dwell in peace and harmony and in prosperity. Grenada, Grenada, I give my life to thee unto eternity. God bless thee from above, my land, my home, my love.
And good morning to Grenada Carrier Crew, Pity Martinique. Once again, it is time for Hard Talk, and indeed, we in studio. We have a lovely lady in studio with us this morning, Devon.
I find you saying it low.
No, it's not low. The volume was down.
Say it out loud.
But before we get into it, let's just say we are live on. Mr. Cameraman, fix the angular Devon microphone thing because it's in the lady face. Yeah, 97.5 City Sound FM. Yeah, Devon, don't forget me already.
89.5 CRFM.
92.9 Sister Rals out there in Carriacou.
And 94.9 We Vibes Radio in Brooklyn.
You see, you don't forget me already, yeah? Let me get a little bit of music in there while I fix that. All right, yes, indeed. So we got that sorted out. 31 minutes after the hour of 10 o'clock. Just before we get into our discussion today on the CCJ, we just want to mention the meetings that we're having tomorrow for you. Yeah, those are the meetings that the constituency meetings that the different members of parliament are having. So you're going to be discussing various issues, inclusive of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Devon, the first one is where tomorrow?
Thursday, St. Andrews Southwest. Right, Harford Village, the Honorable Yulan B. in Horsford.
And
right on our team. Then
we'll be heading to Carriacou at the Bogles Community Center tomorrow. That's the Honorable Kindra Matthew and Stewart. And the other one?
In St. Patrick's East, Honorable Pamela Moses. That's at the Dega bus stop.
And all of them for 6
Thursday.
p.m. tomorrow.
Thursday.
All right. Yes, indeed. And
No,
folks,
you have St. David's. You have a St. David's.
you have a
one.
St. David?
Yes, St.
Tomorrow?
David's.
They have another list?
Tomorrow, yeah. That's behind, right?
Oh, okay. They have a thing behind
Yeah,
there.
Honorable Oliver Joseph, right, at the Current Government School.
Sorry,
right?
Ollie.
6 p.m.
Sorry,
on
Ollie.
Thursday.
Right. So the Honorable Oliver Joseph. Yes, P Lime. It's going to be taking place at the Mount Telecon from 4 p.m. folks. If you're in the neighborhood, if you're in the area, come on out. It's going to be nice. You have all kind of thing. The world famous Felix Lambie Waters. You have barbecue. You have hot wings. You have all kind of thing on sale to eat and drink. And then you have games and thing, and you can interact with your different members of parliament, etc. Nice. Hey, but those of you up there in the U.S., in New York in particular, Medgar Evers College, that's taking place tomorrow. Yeah. The Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, Honorable Peter David, and I believe you might be seeing another 2 members of parliament or so who might be in the area, so they're going to fall in.
Surprise visit.
Surprise visit. Yeah, so that'll be taking place tomorrow. But as we said, it is now, oh boy. Yeah. Well done, Jamari. Nice. Yeah. He's home from school already. Right, nice.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you know, he ain't here, so you know where he is. He's home from school now.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, indeed, folks. So I'm going to get into the discussion now, and we're going to say a special good morning to you, Mrs. Michelle Steele. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm great.
Yes,
I'm great,
indeed.
Sheldon. Good morning to you and to your listeners. Thanks for having me here again.
And how have things been going with the CCJ Advisory Committee? You all have been having meetings and so on, different places. How have things been going so far?
Well, things have been ramping up as they should be because we are trying to prepare for a referendum on the 6th of November. And in addition to meetings that you would have already announced, we are also trying to create our own events and to have some guest speakers coming in from strategic places and islands. Some are political leaders that will already ascribe to the CCJ. Last week we would have had Justice Dennis Byron, Sir Dennis, come and speak to us. He is the former president of the court, so he would have had first-hand experience and be able to answer the questions. So you know, things are definitely getting hotter. I hope everyone is checking out our Facebook page, CCJ Yes Grenada. I know there's a lot of activity on that page, trying to reach many of you, and we're planning to do some walkabouts as well. So you're going to see us in town and in different parishes trying to reach people on the ground.
Yes, all look out for the CCJ crew. And I think Karaku should be looking out to see the CCJ crew very soon as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Karaku, we're going to spend a couple of days there. I believe we slated for the 3rd to the 5th of October being in Karaku.
Yes, indeed. And folks, we're not going to take your calls yet. We're going to have a little discussion in relation to various aspects of the Caribbean Court of Justice before we get into the opening of the phone lines and that sort of thing. As you know, on the 6th of November, Grenadians will be having the opportunity to go to the polls to decide yes or no, whether we are going to graduate or whether we're going to repeat. That's how I put it. Whether we're going to graduate to the next level of independence, yeah, and as a Caribbean region, interdependence, as we work along with each other, if we're going to graduate to that level, or if we're going to repeat and stay at the same level, yeah? So yes, we actually having graduation the 6th of November. We're going to be having that. So Grenadians will have that opportunity.
And I know who trying to stay down in Form 4 and them kind of thing.
You trying to graduate?
I trying to graduate.
Yeah. We want to graduate, and so Grenadians will have the opportunity to graduate. Now, Caribbean Court of Justice, very topical issue right now. No matter where it is, you're hearing people discussing that issue right now of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Now, I've heard from different people what they see as some of the benefits. What do you see in your sphere, not only as a lawyer, because people have this impression that is a lawyer thing, and only lawyers going to benefit from this thing. As if lawyers are representing lawyers. I don't know how come it's only lawyers could benefit from this thing. Lawyers represent clients who just happen to be anybody. It could be the bus driver who listening on morning, Fluffy. Fluffy turned show promoter right now. He's selling ticket on the bus. Yeah, morning. So it could be the bus drivers. It could be the market vendor, as well as it could be the business person. It could even be a student. Nothing stops a student from having a case in the courts.
Or the housewife.
Exactly.
Agricultural farmer.
From your perspective, what do you see as some of the benefits of going to the Caribbean Court of Justice?
Well, Sheldon, to just jump in on that point about the lawyers and persons thinking as a lawyer thing. I think it's a lawyer thing from the point of view that lawyers are the ones that access the court on behalf of the people.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very end of the day, lawyers serve the people. We represent clients. You have had your rights infringed, and you come to a lawyer for advice, and you also come to a lawyer who would be licensed to approach the court for assistance. That doesn't mean that you cannot bring your matter in person, because the court also allows you to bring your matter in person. But of course, you would, I think, be better served by someone with a little bit more experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been saying all along that the CCJ would give you benefits of access to justice. And that essentially means that currently we have a court system where your matter may start, whether it's in the magistrate's court or the high court. If you are not happy with that result, you can appeal to the Court of Appeal, which is a court that we share with the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. So that court will travel around St. Lucia, Dominica, Grenada, all the different territories to serve all the appeals. And then once, or if you feel you want to take the matter higher, you are able to do so, but currently you would have to go to England. You would have to access Her Majesty's Privy Council. And the Privy Council, it's not as easy, or you say easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
Because not only are there a restriction on the type of matters you can bring, but you also have to pay quite hefty costs to access that court, in terms of representation of lawyers, etc. at the court. The Privy Council wouldn't necessarily allow you to appear in person in that forum. With the CCJ is a court which is regional. It is made up of regional and international judges. So it's important to also understand that the CCJ also seeks to recruit the best in the world. And don't forget that the Privy Council is also made up of international judges, not just the English judges, because some of our own regional judges have been Privy Councillors in the past. And essentially with that quality, the CCJ is able to deal with the issues of the Caribbean. They're plugged into our society, to our value system, to what we think, and to really interpret our laws and have the final say by us having our own court. I can't say homegrown, but Caribbean grown.
What do you see? I was having a discussion. Every time I go back to that discussion, it troubles me, where a gentleman was saying to me that he does not believe that we have evolved to the level to have our own courts, that we should submit our judges and magistrates to the judges and magistrates in England and ask them if we have the quality to be able to maintain a court down here like the CCJ. What do you say to an individual like that? Without losing a temper like I would have lost my temper.
Well, first of all, I think we need to understand that we are in the 21st century. And if it is that we have not acceded to that level of maturity as yet, then shame on us. I think that there is also evidence to show that other persons, other bodies have acceded to that level within the Caribbean. And if Grenada was to take that stance or that opinion or that position, we are certainly the ones that have been left behind. That's what I would say. We are I would say, very interested in all the technology. We're living in a fast-paced world. We have Facebook and social media, Instagram. Our people have certainly gotten to that stage where I understand that probably 70,000 people of our population are on Facebook. So why is it not that we are advanced in some areas and we cannot advance in other areas? Apart from which, we have the quality of our court or the judges that have sat on the court, the former president of the CCJ was a Privy Councillor. So if it is that we are to ask England as to whether we have the quality, I believe the endorsement of the Privy Council in the making of some of these judges Privy Councillors is endorsement enough, or is evidence enough that we have the quality.
Many years ago, the West Indies were trying to put together a university, the University of the West Indies. And some of the very arguments that we're hearing now were put forward back then at the creation of what we now know as the University of the West Indies. That we do not have the quality of educators within the Caribbean region to have a proper university, that we ought to submit ourselves and continue to submit ourselves to university education in the UK. And mostly it was the UK those days. You hardly heard of people going to the US and Canada back in those days. But that we should still submit ourselves to education in the UK. But what have we seen now? I'm trying to get the figure of how many Nobel laureates, but we have several Nobel laureates that have come out, Sir Arthur Lewis, Derek Walcott, and so on, from the University of the West Indies. We have, they always have this ad they have with how much prime ministers, Nobel laureates, and so on that have come out of the University of the West Indies. University of the West Indies is rated as one of the top universities in the world, because there are some universities that have never had a Nobel laureate.
That's correct.
University of the West Indies could speak of more than one. Prime ministers, government ministers, all of this, and not only locally, but not only regionally, but internationally as well. Now we're talking of the Caribbean Court of Justice, and some people are saying we don't have the quality. Does that argument sound familiar?
Well, yes, and the argument, it doesn't add up. Remember, when you argue about especially matters like this, I think it's important to really take the emotion out of argument. It is important as well not to be afraid. And I really do believe that a lot of these arguments against the court is grounded in fear. What we have discovered, as you have said, Sheldon, is that with the University of the West Indies, there was a need for not only an independence and a creation of our own Caribbean institutions and a belief in our institutions, but we have to allow our people to access education. And at the time, how many people really could afford to go and study in the UK? So we then create these chasms in our classes, our class strata, where you have a very small percentage at the top capable of affording education, and the majority of people not. And then you have this division. I mean, where does that really take us? And where does it take it stunts our growth and our development. And in the same way, I think those arguments can be applied to every institution, even in the issue of CARICOM. There's always that debate, is CARICOM working, etc. But I know that countries now, international countries, when they look to give aid, they're not giving aid to 1 out of 14 countries. They look at CARICOM as a block. And CARICOM leaders have recognized that they must take a unified position or discuss their position on certain issues, because world leaders look to them as a block. So in the same way, if we are to look or to appear as a people of note, if we're ready, as we like to say, we must show that we have an established court system where the access and the affordability is there without question. And that also allows business persons to feel confident investing in our region. If they feel that they are to invest and they meet with certain hurdles or there are certain disputes, and we don't have a proper court system to really deal with those things, that's another issue where people think the Caribbean is not a place to go. We're not ready.
Yeah. And we, as a region, when you look at things, for instance, when it comes to copyright infringement, patent infringement, and so on, you usually find that people don't pursue it in a serious manner.
Correct.
Because
there's nowhere to go.
That's the thing. And even if you go through your local courts and so on, and the issue is a regional issue, Suppose it's an issue with somebody that's outside of the OECS courts of appeal that you're dealing with, and so on. At least you have this regional framework that you can work with an appeal matter. And that's why I say it's an important issue for Calypsonians.
Yes.
We have had instances here in Grenada of our artists doing tunes, and of those tunes being replicated in other islands nearly word for word. We had that with Boogie B. Many years ago, he sang a song, Clear the Smoke, and a guy in St. Lucia nearly sang it word for word, same rhythm, same everything. And those days, there wasn't sampling to say one rhythm and several people sing it on it. He actually sang over Boogie B's tune in St. Lucia. No action was taken in relation to that, and we've had other instances of the same. Is the Caribbean Court of Justice going to assist our Grenadian artists, some of who end up penniless by this time after Carnival? Is the Caribbean Court of Justice going to help them? And
I would say absolutely, in the sense that just by its very existence, just by its accessibility, it would certainly help. In terms of persons, as you say, that may be penniless after Carnival, we may not have the resources. The court is also set up to deal or to, as they say, give to deserving persons legal aid or financial assistance, so that they don't necessarily have to have this financial hurdle or finances as an obstacle to access the court. Now, there is also something I think that I need to face and to confront head on, because we've heard it out in the public in terms of the feedback, and a lot of people right now in Grenada, I'm not sure if you're aware, Sheldon, that the courts, the high courts in particular, we have come back from our court vacation, the long vacation, which is usually from the end of July to about the middle of September. Prior to that, we would have had a situation where the Lime building, where most of the high courts are consolidated into one building, had to be more or less abandoned for various issues in terms of the physical condition of the building. And so we have had to deal with interim courts, different premises where judges would sit, just to keep things going. In the meantime, the government is trying to find a home for the courts. So right now there is a bit of a crisis in terms of providing a physical home for the High Court. And I think that this is an issue, it's a local issue, and it's certainly something that we need to lobby the government. And I know that the Attorney General, the Minister of Legal Affairs, and also Honorable Peter David, him being a lawyer, have been asked to really be the front ministers on this, and they have been reporting to the bar and trying to, government has plans afoot to really get this situation sorted out. But I think it's important to stress that the voting for a final court of appeal is totally different and separate from the actual issues that you may face locally with your local courts. And those are issues, we do not live in a perfect world, and we are working on the issues. And in the same way, we work on everything in tandem. What do? We put off a vote for 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, 2 months, you know. It's sort of like, you know, you get married and you're not ready to have kids because you figure you don't have the house and you get pregnant. Well, what's going to happen? You know, you have to work along with what you get. And at the end of the day, ensure that your final outcome is what you are achieving or reaching for.
Now, you raise a very interesting issue there of the state of the courts. And I want us to clarify something, especially for those outside of Grenada, that it does not mean that the entire court system is in limbo, that the magistrates' courts are still operating.
Correct.
That the other arms, but the High Court is where the issue is, when matters have gone to the High Court.
Yes.
But that an individual who has a case at the magistrates' court, those issues are still being dealt with, and so on. And
yes. It's not a complete shutdown of the justice system or the courts.
Because that's the impression that's been given to a lot of people outside of Grenada.
Well, no.
That the entire court system in Grenada is at a standstill, that no cases are taking place. You look at the newspaper, you see the passing with people going to court, yet still you have some people giving the impression that no court case is taking place in Grenada.
That is not the case. The magistrates' court are still fully functional, but the high courts, we have had an issue where we've had to temporarily close, for example, the Kaipo building, where one of the courts was situate, because there may have been a detection of a rodent issue. Of course, rodent issues, we have rodent issues in our homes, so I don't anticipate that that is going to ensure the closing of a court for longer than a week or so. So these are the sorts of issues. But, you know, things get really blown up and inflated. And I really think that we need to look at these issues as singularly versus, you know, infecting the entire situation. But we must bear in mind that that lime building, which would have been, and maybe that's a lesson to consider. I'm not really sure. We have to look at that. But we would have had all the courts in one building. And because that one building went down, all the courts have basically suffered. You know, we also, but although all around the world you have a hall of justice and you sort of have all your courts in one building, you know.
But you have the hall of justice in Trinidad, and they have daily complaints about the court system in Trinidad, and that a case, sometimes years a case is there and isn't being extinguished. So
correct.
It's
correct.
Even in Trinidad, with their hall of justice, it doesn't solve the problem. And I think that probably what needs to be looked at is an alternative approach to how you address some of these issues.
Yes.
I honestly believe that teleconferencing in many issues, instead of having to go through getting security, putting prisoners in vans and bringing them down to the magistrate's court, that as is done in some states in the United States, they stay at Richmond Hill Prison, you bring them in a room with their lawyer or whatever, or the lawyer could be at the court, wherever it is, but you have the video conferencing, and that person's matter is dealt with via video conferencing for certain levels of cases.
Yes.
Instead of having to physically find a place to have some of these courts.
Yes.
That could be an option, that you have a smaller place where the magistrates or the judges, according to what level can be, and you video conference. So I think outside of just looking at, well, let's build a hall of justice, spend a couple $1 million, build a hall of justice, and then 10, 15 years from now, it becomes obsolete because people no longer use buildings to do that. I think what needs to be looked at is the alternative approach in the short and medium term, as well as the long term.
Sheldon, and it's good that you raised video conferencing, because that is also something that the courts already access. We are capable of having matters heard by video conference. As a matter of fact, the Caribbean Court of Justice, when they set up the court, and remember, Grenada is a member of its original jurisdiction, so can still access that court, they would have set up video conferencing facilities, which the Court of Appeal uses as well to carry out case management conferences, etc. So, in other words, we have been handed lemons in that we have lost our lime building, or we have had to move the judges out because we certainly cannot have them in unsafe conditions. But we with a setback like this, it doesn't necessarily mean nothing is being done. And so I think support and great constructive suggestions as you have made certainly would be the answer to this. But it is also separate and apart as to whether the CCJ would be a worthwhile addition as a final court of appeal.
And that's the next point I would like you to expound on for us. There's the impression that going to the CCJ is going to cost the Grenadian people. That the process of going to the CCJ is going to cost Grenada a couple millions upon millions of dollars for us to change from the Privy Council to the CCJ. And that, we're not paying for the Privy Council right now, we're going to have to pay, coming up we're going to have to pay for the CCJ. And that the money that we're using for that could have been used to fix the local court system. Can you explain the difference there? What's taking place there? Because as far as I know, we don't have to pay anything to go to the CCJ. We paid already.
That's correct.
So what's the situation there?
Well, I think that the initial, when the idea for this common court was formed, that would have been all part of CARICOM, and CARICOM determining, okay, how do we really create this independence and set up, to have CARICOM function at its highest level. And one of the elements was to have this court. The court, I think a lot of people now know, functions in an original jurisdiction, dealing with the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which is that treaty where the countries got together and devised the ideas and ideals of CARICOM. So one of them being the single market economy and the freedom of CARICOM, of movement of CARICOM individuals through the CARICOM's single space. And so part of the setting up of the court, or part of the pushback on setting up of such a court, was that, look, you know what, we need to create an independent institution. And to do that, we need to have financial independence. And the way in which the court was modeled was the CCJ Trust Fund. So the countries of CARICOM would have, back in the 90s or early 2000s, contributed a certain amount of money to the CCJ Trust Fund. Indeed, the magic figure is $100 million US. And that money is invested and managed by a board that sits on that trust fund. No political appointees, no politicians sit on that board. And the interest of the fund generated is what really pays for the running costs of the court. So you don't have a situation where, as with many situations, the Commonwealth Secretariat, the UN, where countries have to be paying to keep things going, and then you can't access because you haven't paid. So Grenadians are not going to get a story about, oh, well, you're sorry, you can't access, you haven't paid. Because this court has been paid for. And we're simply not accessing it. We're not using it. It's also part of the treaty obligations that the countries eventually subscribe to the court. And Grenada is one of those countries that simply have not gotten on board as per treaty obligation. Grenada, it is also important to note, is one of probably two countries, Antigua as well, that require a referendum. And so the prime ministers have taken a step, and Antigua is also going to have the referendum on the same day as us to really try to, you know, take this bold step.
One of the things that I wanted to ask, and it's on the issue that I raised before, teleconferencing. Does it require, according to what you know right now, would it require an amendment to the present legislation, or would it be able to done? Does a person have to appear in person before a magistrate or judge, or can it be done via video conferencing for criminal matters, mainly for criminal matters?
Criminal matters.
Yeah, because I know it can be done for the CCJ, but would that also require an amendment to present legislation? I can't say that it's not allowed, but I can't say it's allowed either.
Yes, yes. Well, under our civil procedure rules, which governs the High Court matters, that is the civil matters, as the private matters, the rules do provide for video conferencing. I am not necessarily a practitioner in the criminal courts, but I do know enough to say that that sort of methodology or procedure is something that is easily prescribed for, if not already provided for under the criminal rules of court and rules of procedure. So that really is not a huge obstacle or something that can't be absolute. And no, but the important thing is that with rules, Parliament gives the laws give the power to the minister to pass the rules. So we don't need to go to Parliament
in that
to
case
pass
it could be done
rules
by
if
the
that
minister.
is something correct. Right? The main laws you must go to Parliament. But then the laws may provide, you may see something, the minister may make rules for so. You'll find that the minister has that power to do so and may probably get the sign-off of cabinet. But it doesn't have to go through the parliamentary procedure, right? As our principal laws would have to.
Okay.
Councillor, we keep hearing the whole question of original jurisdiction. Grenada is part of the original jurisdiction. Can you expound on that? Can you explain to the listeners what is the participation of Grenada in that space?
Sure. The original jurisdiction of the court is, we could probably even say this is the basis of the court being set up. And remember, I would have said earlier that when CARICOM created its treaty, and the treaty is basically the agreement between all the countries as to How is CARICOM going to be governed? What are the rights of the member states and their citizens, etc.? So you need to have a court or some forum. If you created these rights, you must also anticipate that there could be a breach of these rights. So you must have some forum where you can go to and say, listen, this has happened and I need to have redress of those rights. And this is how the CCJ was necessary. The Caribbean Court of Justice was necessary. And this court was set up to deal with that situation. So if your rights are breached, you don't go to the High Court, you don't go to the Magistrate Court in your local country, you don't go to the Court of Appeal. You can go directly to the CCJ where in its original jurisdiction.
Okay.
Right? As a matter of fact, and I am actually very proud to say this, that I was in a colleague's office, I believe it would have been yesterday, and he was dictating to his secretary and getting all his paperwork ready right into the CCJ website. He registered on the CCJ website, and on behalf of a client, he has filed a claim in the CCJ's original jurisdiction because his clients would have been affected in another CARICOM country where they would have been treated poorly and their freedom of movement was seriously breached and affected.
You almost say who and what?
Well,
I'll leave it alone.
For client confidentiality, I have not said named any names.
I will leave it alone.
But it was very exciting to be a part of that and to really see it happening, because what you do is that you go in, you register. The court then, the website will then allow you or give you the usual confirmation email that you've been registered, etc., etc. And there they were uploading all of their court documents, creating a small statement as to what was, the issues raised and effectively what would be involved in the claim, and filing right there online and receiving an email of confirmation that their file and their claim has been received.
So the whole amount of documents you'll have to usually file in the registry and so it's no more.
Well, yes, they are not into paper so much. They're more into you still have to create the documents, but you scan and you upload it to the website. So that's the original jurisdiction, and that's why I say Grenada is already a part of it, and I have witnessed the filing of a claim in the original jurisdiction by Grenadian citizens this week, right? Then the reason we are voting now for the final appellate court, because our constitution, which we would have received on independence, that is a document that would have set out how everything works in Grenada, our parliament, our cabinet, our ministers, our attorney general, etc., our Bill of Rights. And those are all things that we as independent states must now have to say, this is how we, as Sir Dennis has put it in the past, it is a reflection of the aspirations of the people. This is what the people want to ascribe to. These are their ideals, and this is stated in our document. And in that constitutional document, the final court is the Privy Council, Her Majesty's Privy Council. Hence, the Constitution is so well, as we call them, enshrined provisions, so very much protected, that you can't just go and change these provisions unless the referendum is held. That is, people vote to change it. It is not in the power of our politicians or parliamentarians simply to change the Constitution. So in Grenada, we have to go to the people and say to the people, or make the case, as they say, to determine whether we want to go or not. And that is what we are voting for now.
No, one of our listeners still didn't quite capture the difference between the original jurisdiction and the appellate jurisdiction of the CCJ, because they're saying, well, to them, it sounds as though, okay, Grenada file a case to the CCJ. So if Grenada file a case to the CCJ, then why we need all of this now? In their mind, that's how they're seeing it now.
Yes.
So they're not understanding original. So original jurisdiction is in relation to...
Yes.
I know you just went over it, but just...
Yes, I know. I would suggest to forget the word original. Just know that anything to do with the CARICOM Treaty, Grenada can go straight to the CCJ. right? And in this case, where the case was filed, people were stopped in another Caribbean island, and they were not treated very well. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you remember the Shanique Myrie case, where she was stopped by Barbados Immigration, and she was strip searched and put through quite a bit of inappropriate search, etc. And she would have obtained she was able to complain that her rights were infringed, and she was successful before the CCJ. So a case like that, where the CARICOM Treaty, that is the main document or treaty that you can go, Treaty of Chagaran, that's correct, that you can go straight to the CCJ on, and that is what Grenada would have done. Now, the final appellate court is the matter where you have brought your case in the magistrate's court or the high court, right? And then you've taken it to the court of appeal, and then you decide, I still don't like this result, I'm pushing it further. And right now, a lot of us can't push it further. If it's Privy Council, it's like, oh, okay, well, I have to take it. I can't go any further. So we are saying, no, we want to go to the CCJ instead of the Privy Council. And that is the final appeal court. So in the final appellate jurisdiction, you have already gone through the other courts. And probably that's a good way to remember. The appellate jurisdiction, you've started in the lower courts, either the magistrate's court or the high court. You've gone up to the court of appeal. You're not happy, you're going up to the CCJ, right? In the original jurisdiction, you go straight to the CCJ. And the original jurisdiction only deals with the CARICOM Treaty. Okay. So once you hear original,
so freedom
think
of movement.
CARICOM Treaty, and then think straight.
Okay.
So I think that clears it up a lot.
I hope your listener will give us some feedback.
Appellate is anything criminal, anything else.
Correct.
Criminal, civil matter.
Correct.
Original jurisdiction.
CARICOM Treaty. Exactly.
Now, I was about to sort of ask a question in terms of expounding, because some people still are confused as to what you can access at this point in time at the CCJ and what you can't. And whether at this point in time you can bring any criminal cases to the CCJ, despite we are not in the
final appellate
court.
So the answer would be no. You cannot bring that criminal matter because you are not part of that final appellate court.
Okay, that is something a lot of persons has been concerned
about.
Even a civil matter, you can't go with a civil matter. Once it's not a civil matter in relation to the CARICOM Treaty.
Correct.
Okay.
So if we were to be allowed to export a certain item into a fellow CARICOM territory, and we are being barred illegally from doing so according to the CARICOM Treaty, we can go to the CCJ.
Well, if there is some relevance to the CARICOM Treaty, right?
No, I said if we are allowed under the CARICOM Treaty and we've been illegally.
Yeah, I mean, there has been, for example, a good example, apart from, so Shanique Myrie is a great example because that is that person who would have been affected by government. And when Sir Dennis was here on the last occasion, and we would have gone up to Grenville, the Luke Cinema in Grenville, he was able to say or explain to people that Shanique Myrie, of course, she would have had to provide evidence to the court. And she wouldn't have had the resources to get her witnesses down to Trinidad for hearing or anything like that. And so what did the court do? The court picked up and traveled to Jamaica and heard her side of the story. They then left Jamaica and they traveled to Barbados, and they took evidence from the Barbados officials or witnesses there. And then they would have delivered the court's judgment by a teleconference from their headquarters in Port of Spain, Trinidad. Now, if that is not a court that's working, I don't know what else we want. So this is a sort of situation that you would find with a CARICOM issue, an original jurisdiction issue. Another example, for example, is that we have heard of CARICOM tariffs. So trading between the countries, there are certain tariffs that they is shared and fixed. So no one CARICOM country can affect tariffs to affect your ability to trade your goods. So in other words, they can't put the duties up any further to prevent you from bringing in your stuff. And there has been a case with Trinidad Cement, where they were able to access the courts to deal with a breach of that situation. So that is the kind of thing that you can bring under the original jurisdiction.
Okay, I want to ask one question in terms of criminal cases. Now, we're not part of the final thing of the CCJ. Now, what do you say to a person who, for example, has been convicted, let's say, of a serious crime? May not be murder, but serious enough to warrant them taking it further, appeal and so. When they reach to the appellant court, the OECS court, and so, and let's say they've been turned down, can they, well, because I don't know what the statute of limitations are, all right, with some of the cases, can they, okay, let's say it happened 2 years ago, but it reached to the OECS and cannot, they want to go bring it further, but can't because of costs to the Privy Council. Can they, okay, after Grenada goes to the CCJ, the final appellant jury, can they take that cause there for redress?
If Grenada...
Yeah, once Grenada becomes part of the final appellant.
Well, okay. Well, I think one important thing to state is that when it comes to criminal appeals, the Privy Council is open to that.
Yes.
And there is even some system of financial aid to help with criminal appeals, simply because of the fact that, you know, there's a liberty of the subject involved. And you find that this happens particularly with serious matters like murder and death penalties, etc., etc. So you do have different rules in relation to the level of the crime. But the idea with the CCJ is that it's open to all. There's no restriction on matters. There's no, you know, what can I say? You can't come because it doesn't involve this sort of importance. However, if you already have the matter available, so in other words, that should not arise. That question you've raised should not arise, because if you were, or you felt you could access the Privy Council as a criminal applicant, then you should have had, or there should have been the resources there for you to do so.
To do that.
Yes.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
No, we've seen as well the argument being put forward that the CCJ, as the final court of appeal, is still going to be above the means of the average Grenadian. That Grenadians still will not be able to access justice because it's still going to cost a pile of money to go to the CCJ and so. Speak to us a bit about that and the mechanisms within the CCJ to deal with that particular issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on what you call a pile of money, because I know that the CCJ has said that the filing fees or the cost to access the CCJ probably does not cross or is on average of $500 US. So, you know, there is also, when you're really involved in an appeal like this, so you look at, okay, do I have to pay for my lawyers to go to Trinidad to appear before the CCJ? Do I have to appear? Do I have to go as well? Or, you know, at the end of the day, we have video conferencing. The CCJ says, look, the answer to your question about anybody traveling for anything, you can sit and simply appear by video conference. It's also important to note that as a final appellate court, you're dealing really with a lot of record. You're not necessarily taking any fresh evidence or anything like that, right? In Shanique Maori, you took evidence because it was in the original jurisdiction. You brought your claim directly to CCJ. They heard the claim fresh from the start. In the case of the final appellate court, you're really relying on the record of appeal, what has gone before you. You would have a full transcript of the hearing, etc. So more than likely, you're looking at your lawyer taking the trip. And as I've said, your lawyer doesn't have to take the trip. As a matter of fact, the CCJ...
They can argue from home?
Correct. I was just about to say that. There was a recent case where the lawyer was permitted to argue from his home computer, by teleconference to the judges. So really and truly, I think that because they are dedicated, or their idea is to ensure this access to justice, there is that level of flexibility. I don't think that we should stop at what has been done already by the CCJ. It is more like what is possible, they will do it, or they are willing to do it, because they have showed or displayed that willingness in the past.
I also remember Justice Byron speaking of instances where people who had specific cases but could not afford that they were afforded the opportunity by the CCJ to have their cases argued, that they would have even contacted, I think in one case it was Guyana, and they would have contacted the Bar Association in Guyana to get persons to represent an individual, probably because it was a case that would have been groundbreaking in
Yes.
some form or format.
Yes.
And they would have gotten, waived the application fee, and they would have done various things to ensure that that person that really couldn't afford justice was given the opportunity. I don't think I ever hear the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council doing anything like that.
No.
Outside, if it's a murder case,
A murder
capital
case.
punishment,
Correct.
and they have that
Correct.
sort of
Correct.
thing. So I think that as well makes it more reasonable for us as the Grenadian people. And folks, at this time, we're going to open the lines. We're going to open it 17 minutes after the hour of 11 o'clock. We have in studio with us Mrs. Michelle Steele. She's a member of the CCJ Advisory Committee, practicing attorney at law, and very, very au fait with many of the issues around not just the CCJ, but law in general here in Grenada. And regionally, you do regional work as well? Or you only do local?
Mainly local.
Mainly local. Mainly local don't mean only local.
Yes.
When I say a plane, mainly local, that means one or two, you go hear a little country and western falling there from somewhere, you understand? You hear something falling there too. But folks, the phone lines are open, 4407377.
And 347-329-3101.
And many of you may have doubts in your mind or questions in your mind about the CCJ. Let's tell you, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Because if you're thinking it means you have some sort of doubt in relation to that aspect, and probably it can be cleared up for you. So we're opening the phone lines, giving you the opportunity to call in, whether you're local, whether you're international, to call in and then give your view in relation to this particular issue. As we said, on the 6th of November, we'll be going to the referendum, and you need to know what it is you're going to vote for. Many persons have been speaking about the bill and the bill
Yes, yes.
and the bill and different aspects of the bill,
The content.
the content of the bill, and so I don't think you have I don't think you have the bill with you, but I think we have the first caller online.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, gentlemen, and good morning to your guests.
Good morning.
Now,
Good morning.
the question I have is, ma'am, has the government dot all the I's and cross all the T's in terms of what is required constitutionally to make the necessary changes in terms of having the referendum on the 6th of November? That's my first question. And the second one is that from now until the 6th of November, is it a situation of all that is required is the powers that be informing and educated and guiding the people, and in terms of how important the CCJ is, in terms of us, of the CCJ being our final appellant court? That's my question.
Okay, thank you, my friend.
Yes, so two questions.
Yes, thank you, caller. The government would have gone through this process before in 2016, and in terms of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, the government would have provided a bill which has been placed online, our Facebook page, that's the CCJ Yes Grenada.
Yeah.
Has
CCJ Yes Grenada, folks. Look for it on
Bill,
Facebook.
yes, online. The government has also ensured that it would have had its first reading in Parliament, its second reading. It's gone forward to the House for affirmation, and it has also been debated in the Senate. And the writ of the Governor General has been issued. All of this in accordance with procedure required for the making of this new law and also for the having of this referendum. So I would say that the government has done what is required legally to put this bill before the people and the referendum as well. In terms of the government's role, whether it's only educating, I think that the government's role is to, I always say, facilitate and enable. This is a national discussion. And in terms of educating, the government and I would say the CCJ Advisory Committee went through great pains to select or to invite members of all organizations in Grenada. So we would have a wide cross-section of representatives. So we kind of created our own little house of representatives, but not necessarily from each constituency, but more from the major political parties, from the churches, from the trade unions, from the bar association, from the Chamber of Commerce, just to capture a very wide cross-section of persons. And what is the reason for this? So that we could also capture the feedback, the discussion, the debate, and sort of assist and to resolve any sort of issues in persons' minds. We have also done these series of events where we are going into the different parishes. We're outreaching all across the island, including Carriacou Petit Martinique next week, to really go out there and speak to persons and to hear their concerns and to hopefully address their concerns and in a timely fashion, so that persons on November 6th, when they go out there to vote, and you could vote yes, you could vote no, but you know what you are voting yes and no about, and not that you're just going there to vote no because somebody tell you, or you're going there to vote yes because somebody tell you. You're informing yourself. I hope I've answered your question.
One listener has sent a message. They're asking about the issue that the court is headquartered in Trinidad, but Trinidad is not utilizing the Privy Council as their final court of appeal. What do you have to say about that particular issue?
Well, I want everyone to understand that acceding to the CCJ, remember we would have had the Privy Council as our final appellate court from the birth of our nations as independent nations. So perhaps you might think, okay, well, I've had the Privy Council for 40 years. So why am I going to the CCJ? Right? I think like all of the CARICOM countries, the same issues are there. The fare, do we have the quality? Are we mature? Are we this? Are we that? And so each country for themselves have to make their own assessments and have to do their own soul searching and answer these questions honestly and make their decisions. As a matter of fact, I understand that Trinidad is going to be carrying on or taking on this debate in 2019, joining the CCJ. There's another aspect of this that I dare say ought to be considered, and you know, for a very long time, I always call Trinidad the sort of like the baron or the kingdom within the poorer countries, because of that oil and gas economy. And I don't think that cost to go to the Privy Council may have been a big aspect for Trinidad, because they probably would have had the resources to go a little bit more than the ordinary people of the smaller islands, beginning with the OECS. I'm not casting any aspersions and saying this is the reason, but remember, every island has different
I could
concerns.
put someone Trinidad hat one time. So
Yeah, every island has different concerns and different issues to consider.
What I can say is this, though, that at the point in time that the Caribbean Court of Justice came into being, and various countries would have petitioned for the court to be based there, and Trinidad won. Probably Trinidad had more money, as you said, they had more money to be able to build the court and provide the facility and provide the security systems and the technology. St. Vincent may not have had that. Grenada may not have had that. Montserrat was studying a volcano. Other countries would have had their challenges, but Trinidad could have provided the physical location and the technical competencies at the point in time to construct and to take everything into consideration to have the court up and running. The access between it's in the Southern Caribbean, but also to South America for countries like Suriname and also Guyana that can be part of the court.
Yes, Belize.
And to be able to, it's also a commercial hub. If people have to fly in or out, you have international flights that originate in Trinidad and regional flights that originate in Trinidad as compared to Grenada or St. Vincent or St. Lucia or St. Kitts. Why does Trinidad not use the court? If you go to the CCJ website, you'd realize that a significant amount of the cases that are before the CCJ from the Caribbean are from Trinidad. And many of the cases that have been dealt with are from Trinidad, because these are the individuals who have the financial resources, as you mentioned, to be able to go to it. But even bigger than that, the Privy Council is based in the UK with judges from Scotland and England. It's based in the UK right now, and they do not use it as their final court of appeal, which in my mind for somehow nullifies the argument of the court is based in Trinidad and it's not being used by Trinidad. I also, over the weekend, in doing some of my own research, realized that this CCJ debate is not a new debate and has been raging throughout the Caribbean for well close to a decade. I've seen some arguments on YouTube by Ramesh Lawrence Maraj, and a serious debate. Apparently there was an attempt, I think, by the Kamla Prasad Bissessa administration to accede to the CCJ, to move to the CCJ. And it met with some resistance in Trinidad in some quarters, so there was a discussion there. I know that in Jamaica there has been a very healthy discussion in relation to the issue of the CCJ for many, many years. The present Prime Minister of Jamaica has stated his intention to bring the issue of the CCJ to a referendum. The former Prime Minister, the Honorable Portia Simpson Miller, would have stated that she was just going to do it through Parliament. They don't need any referendum. But the opposition at the point in time, who are now the government, were arguing that it's best to go to a referendum. The discussion has been taking place in St. Kitts. It has been taking place throughout the Caribbean. So it's not a new debate, but it is a debate that time has come, as Honorable Mia Motley had said. I think the time has now come. And many countries are looking towards Antigua and Grenada to see what happens on November 6th, to see how to move forward. In their view, they may be looking at it from not just the importance of conforming to their treaty obligations and conforming to what they know is the right thing to do. But you know, some of them might be close to election and they want to go to it because they're looking at it from a political standpoint. So they are looking to see what takes place in countries that don't have to worry about the political aspect, but just doing what is necessary for the country at this point in time to know how to move forward.
Yes.
That's how I see it.
And I think, Sheldon, that for the past few minutes where you would have gone through all the different islands that have been entertaining or talking about it, these are all islands that can accede to this CCJ as a final appellate court without that vote of the people. And as a result, you may find that a lot of the debate and discussion takes place in Parliament. And it is the politicians, right? So you mentioned Kamla Prasad Bissessa trying to get it through in Trinidad before. And she was met by opposition. And who was she met by opposition? The opposition, right? So what you're finding is that we're caught up in this whole political thing as well, which CCJ is supposedly or set up to be free of politics. But for these countries to accede, they need to get over their politics. And for Grenada has not only to get over its politics, but also to have the national discussion. And I think by the time Grenadians and Antiguans vote, the island, the people will be so educated. We could go out there and talk to the people of the other islands, because this may be a thing where you have to do this from the ground up. And the other islands, because they're not mandated to do so, has started from the top down, and I dare say from the top, and it never really reached down. You know?
Is there a fear among members of the legal fraternity? Is there a fear among some members of acceding to the CCJ as a final appellate court? Or is it that most members agree that yes, this is the right thing to do? Or is there a certain grouping within the legal fraternity that thinks, yeah, we need to do this, but maybe 10 years from now? Or, no, we don't need to do this, we need to maintain. In fact, everybody should be wearing wigs again. Well, no, you still wear wigs in between. Is that the lawyer?
Not in the court. Well,
Not in the court.
not
Okay.
in the court.
Shouldn't be wearing it at all if you
Yes.
ask me. But anyway,
Yes.
that's a discussion for our next time.
Yes.
But how does the legal fraternity see this right now?
Well, I mean, it would be interesting, Sheldon. I always say that we should expand these discussions and not just have members of the committee on. It would be nice if you could invite some members of the legal fraternity to chat with your listeners and yourselves on Hard Talk. But I have been a part of or witness to a general resolution that the Bar Association is supportive of the court. And of course, we're a body of members, a body of human beings. So there will always be proponents and opponents. And so there are some opponents of the court. And I think that the main issue is the frustration in terms of the local situation right now. And it's something, as I said, that we must not allow issues that are not connected to overwhelm us or to overwhelm our reason, but to also work on those issues in tandem with what we are seeking to achieve.
So let's look at it from an aspect, just try and sort of open people's eyes to what is being put forward by certain people who are making that claim about the local court system, and we're speaking specifically about the high courts and so. In my mind, what they are saying is that if it were a doctor and you're speaking about the healthcare system, you're saying until you fix
The bricks and
all
mortar.
of the outside facilities, all of the healthcare centers around, don't focus on opening the emergency center. Don't focus on putting state-of-the-art equipment inside there so that if you get in an accident and you reach inside there, you don't have to put you in an ambulance and drive you down the hill to reach down on the carnage to try and bring you in Morning Island Health Services to bring you inside. You had to tell them morning there, Devon. Island Health Services and so on. You don't have to drive you down in an ambulance to bring you there and try and wheel you in, but that everything can be done at the new accident and emergency ward there. It's the same. You're getting a different level of treatment. You're getting a different level of access to something that you will need. Nobody knows when you're going to need the hospital, and nobody knows when you're going to need a lawyer, and you're going to need the court system, and you're going to need the appellate courts. Should we say, cease all work right now at the accident and emergency system with all the state-of-the-art equipment you're getting and new ambulances and so on? Should we say, cease work on that? Make sure that you fix every health center in Grenada right now. Make sure that all of them are state-of-the-art health centers before you go to that.
Move on, yes.
And I think that's what some people are technically saying, that unless you can fix this one thing that's the problem here in Grenada, not only in Grenada, regionally, that you shouldn't go to the other level.
Yes. Well, Sheldon, I will say as a lawyer that I'm wise enough not to say that I'm speaking for other lawyers before I go on to say or make my comments. Because these may not necessarily be the same views of other lawyers in Grenada. But in my mind, I think that acceding to the CCJ is not just about making a move to, okay, well, I've replaced the Privy Council with a court and another court, and everybody can access it, which is huge in itself. But acceding to the CCJ is really understanding the bigger picture. It's about opening up the minds of the public to understand what their justice could mean for them. It's about understanding not only the appellate jurisdiction, but the original jurisdiction, and hopefully allowing them to access more the original jurisdiction. Because right now, people are members, Grenadians are members, and we have not accessed the original jurisdiction. So it's to understand that aspect. The second aspect is that the court, the CCJ, is independent. I see you kind of have a little.
No, I was going to bring
pause.
a call on. Let's just take the one on the independence. Hello? Hello? Hello?
To the Privy Council.
Apparently, this caller has been talking there and he
Hold
waited
on.
now. Hello, caller. Hello?
Hello.
you need to listen when we put you on, because we didn't hear a word you said so far, so you have to start from scratch.
No, I didn't know.
No, we didn't put you on yet. We just put you on. So go right ahead.
Yes. Hey, I want to say to Grenadian people, as we prepare to go out and vote for the CCJ, I want us to go out and vote with the love and care for our neighbor. And if we go out and vote yes and care for love and care for our neighbors, we will make the right choice. And that choice we're making to vote yes for the CCJ, because with the CCJ, it gives us access and give us every one of us access to the CCJ. Right, I make it a level playing field for every one of us, because we had the Privy Council as our final court. As Mr. Dennis Brown was saying, in 10 years, less than 5 cases went to the Privy Council. And many times what happened, people want to go to the final court, but black, they don't have the funds, so they have to just take what they get. I want to say to Greenland people, let them make the right choice, and the right choice is to vote yes. And if we love our neighbors, love ourselves, we vote yes for it, because it is the best, it is good for each and every one of us. So, Brother Devon and Sheldon, Mr. Steele, you all have a wonderful day. God bless you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Just before you get on, you were speaking about the independence of the court before we took that call. I believe it's the independence of the court you were just making a point on. Yeah.
No, well, what I was saying was that quite apart from the independence that we have been discussing and so on in terms of how they're set up, this court it exists on its own. It does not or it will not be affected by the local situation in any other jurisdiction or territory that decides to make it a final appellate court. Mm-hmm. That's the first point. But having it as living on its own, it also then will become the top of our hierarchy of courts, mm-hmm. right? And the CCJ has shown in the past, not only with the installation of the video conferencing equipment in every territory that's allowed to access the court, whether in its original and appellate jurisdiction, but in Grenada, for example, it would have been part of and fostered what is called a Juris Project, which was a way of trying to get the backlog of cases that was that had developed in the system, heard. And Justice Sir Dennis would have been I would call him the father of what we call mediation. Mm-hmm. So we also have the system of mediation, which has been going on as well in the courts. And what we have is a situation where it was court-connected mediation, and it has actually now evolved or expanded to pre-action mediation. Mm-hmm. So this is all about changing. It's a paradigm shift. Understanding that disputes can be settled in a variety of ways. So there's the push for the alternative dispute resolution, which means that before you go into court, you exhaust all means of resolving your dispute. So you do it whether by trying to do it between your lawyers. Yes, you can have legal representation because you need to know about your legal rights and how far can I go with this. But you start with your lawyers. You can go on to have a pre-action mediation. As a matter of fact, I did a pre-action mediation 2 weeks ago, and it was successful. And everybody wrapped up and went home.
So you don't have to go on.
So we don't have to go into court,
yeah.
Right? We also have to understand, and I think that people, unfortunately, everything goes wrong somewhere, they blame the government. And it's time really for us to take a deep look and probably before we blame the government, just stop and assess. So we would have a situation too where people would go to court without even attempting to resolve matters. So then you end up with a backlog of cases. You end up with a buildup of cases. So is it okay? Well, you know what? I can't stop people from filing matters. So do I have to now hire 3 judges? Then next year, oh boy, I have to hire 4 judges. Now 5 judges. Because that is the reality of the situation. We also have to balance our resources to be able to deal with the administration of justice. So administration of justice is not only trying to get these matters out as quickly as possible, but we also have no control over persons accessing the courts as they should. Mm-hmm. So all of these things we're saying is that if we can have this final appellate court as well, which has shown its ability to set up e-filing and video conferencing and such great efficiency and resource, Why can't we access this court, get the court to assist us with any local issues we have? I think that it would be part of a greater unit and it would better serve the public.
Yes, indeed. And I think we have a caller online.
Good morning and welcome. Hello? Hello, good morning.
Try this way. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brother Devon. Good morning to my beautiful sister. You
Good
know
morning.
what I would like to see? I know I'm going for the CCJ, and you know what I would like to see? In that, I want they to fix those people, especially some of those farmers, for taking with things. Put it good penalty on those buyers. That is why I'm going for the CCJ. The CCJ, you have a lot of things inside there for the CCJ, no? So that is why we have to vote for it. And anytime you see this kind of thing they put in on the media thing, those wrong things they just do, I want some of them, the CCJ, go help us there too. So my sister are going for it full force. So thank you very much and God bless all you.
Excellent.
Okay.
God bless
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
No, one. Go ahead, Devon.
No, just two things. The whole question of mediation, and it was raised, and so I think one of the things that, as you said, we must try and implement much more in Grenada, the whole question of mediation, right? That will help the whole question of the backlogs, everything. And persons must consider that, because there are some petty issues that happens within the communities, family issues, and instead of talking with one another, getting somebody to mediate and so on, try and reach a solution, we run to take it to the court.
Yes.
And sometimes it's years in the court, and then we blame the court system. But you know, so the whole question is also too.
And not just a question of mediation. Remember, mediation is an outflow from the Caribbean Court of Justice. This was part of the jurisprudence project to reduce the backlog of cases that were there.
Well, actually, mediation would have been started when Sir Dennis was as the president of the Court of Appeal, or EC Court of Appeal.
The OECS court.
Yes. And so you want to talk about quality of judges. Sir Dennis has really been spearheading so many of these projects, really striving for efficiency and the training of judges and education. And I mean, I cannot tell you that there are many other courts in the world that can really point to this sort of scholarship and, you know, dedication and commitment to really have this sort of dispute resolution set up.
Also too, I sort of want to, and I've been
Before we go, we have a call online.
Good morning and welcome.
Yes, good afternoon, gentlemen.
Morning still.
Morning.
And to the lady still.
Morning.
Lady, I take, it's not with ease that I interrupt your very healthy discussion, but I just wish to raise a perspective. I think you yourself, Brother Scott, handled it to some extent. The fact that the rest of the Caribbean is looking at the people of Grenada and Antigua and monitoring what our people will do with regard to that thing. You used the term, you said that actually this exercise is encouraging our people to operate on a higher level, opening up our minds to operate at a higher level. And that is so significant. Yet, I think some people fail to appreciate its importance, because it speaks to what I refer as, some would say, the mental liberation of our people. The court really, and acceding to the court, as you say, opens our minds to operating at a higher level. That benefit is, I mean, cannot be given in monetary terms, but lady, that it's so significant, and I just thought I had to call and reiterate that point, because I think if Grenada people and Antigua people really demonstrate to our Caribbean islands that we can operate at that higher level, it's a significant step. Thank you, gentlemen.
Right.
Thank you, lady.
Thank you,
very
caller.
much.
Let me raise one issue that I think one or two people have been coming up with. Or Devon, I think you had a point you were going to make. Let you make your point and then I'll make that
just
one. Before you forget, because I have mine written down.
and it's something I've been always grappling with. Some blame I really want to lay on the feet of some of the politicians and some of our institutions within the Caribbean. The whole question of the Treaty of Chaguaramas. I don't think from its signing since 1981, somewhere around there, enough
91. It was a revised treaty.
Yeah, the revised. Enough education, right, has been disseminated, and our people within the Caribbean have not been, given that opportunity and so to know more about that treaty. Because you see, these are some of the problems that stem from not understanding our obligation, within the whole treaty itself, the CCJ, right? If we were much more educated within the Caribbean as to our obligation and why it is important for us to be a part of the CCJ that ties in the whole thing, then I think it would have been much easier at this point in time for most of the countries and its citizens grappling with it. I just wanted to make that,
Yes.
that point there.
I want to make a point on that. And it will seem a strange point. But I think we have ourselves to blame for not understanding about the Treaty of Chaguaramas, and I'll say why. The information has been in existence for 45 years. 45 years. The Treaty of Chaguaramas has been signed. Why you see I joking this? Because I want to make sure I get it correct. I want that time. 45 years. The Treaty of Chaguaramas has been available. Since the internet has become very popular, we have it available via the internet. There have been articles in local newspapers here in Grenada on various aspects of the Treaty of Chaguaramas for many years. Even this year, there have been articles in relation to the Treaty of Chaguaramas and trade and free movement and so on. This discussion has been taking place. Even when we were having that discussion, the CCJ Advisory Committee, together with the students, you had that argument about, the Constitution is not readily available, and the Constitution itself, going on 45 years, being available as well, that somebody could easily walk to the Botanical Gardens and go to the printery and buy a copy for $25, I think, I know the price change, of the Grenada Constitution, and I could pull my copy one time, the Grenada Constitution, and avail yourself of the opportunity. It's also available for free online, that people can find it. But you see, just as with the Bible, if people don't want to know, they ain't going to know. And the Bible been around for 2,000 years. And up to now, most of the people on the face of the earth cannot tell you word for word what's in the Bible, and they cannot tell you every aspect of the Bible. The Treaty of Chaguaramas has been around for 45 years. You think everybody going to know about that?
Well,
In the Caribbean region?
You see that, and
The Bible been around for 2,000 or more. In fact, more than 2,000. It was there before Christ. So more than that.
Yeah, well, now that we have technology more readily available to us,
People still don't know the Bible.
I think the appeal to our citizens and so is to seek out the information, and so when it comes to the Caribbean Court of Justice and other related matters, especially with the Treaty of Chaguaramas, it is very important, because the CCJ would not be the last thing that we will have to battle with to get this whole thing together. It's just.
But I think too, just the as Sheldon was indicating, the treaty has been around, and then there was a revised treaty which would have been open for signature July 2001 in the Bahamas. It was in 2006 that it was made, or it would have entered into force, and that would have been because every country or every government took it, would have gradually signed on to the treaty. And I think that's where we were really focusing on that single market economy, etc., etc. So it's something, though, I think, as you're saying, Sheldon, with the Bible, and people can't tell you what's in it word for word, unless it's stuck in front of your face and say, hey, listen, look at this. I want you to consider this. I want you to go and read. Well, I don't know anything about the treaty. Really and truly, I think we're as human beings, we are busy with, as they say, day-to-day life. And unless we are asked to look at this revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, you're not necessarily a politician yourself, or you're not in the courts or anything like that. You might keep putting it off. It's not something that's, as they say, a sexy topic.
I can tell
that you want to go and say, well, that's some great bedtime reading, you know.
A lot of people, the only time they do any reading out of the Bible is when they're told to do a scripture reading at a funeral. Telling you that's the only time some people just read the Bible.
Exactly.
But scripture reading at a funeral.
I think the beauty of the and I always say that, you know, where we might consider that this is a disadvantage, it may be an advantage to us where Grenada and Antigua have to go by referendum, because it is really an opportunity for education of our people. It's not a question of a decision being made at the top and, you know, the politicians hoping that they don't get voted out of office because they went to the CCJ, which is really what it is. I mean, we need to take the fear away from the politicians and put it to the people. If the people vote for it, then we put that issue to bed. Not, oh gosh, well, that Prime Minister had to come out because he put us in the CCJ soup. You know, and so I think that is one of the really great benefits of this national debate, that and even on the last referendum, when we were talking about gender equality and we were talking about same-sex marriage and people were coming to all the debates, it was fantastic, you know, that people were actually out there willing to air their views and saying, listen, I'm really not comfortable with this, but they came out and they said it, and that's fantastic in itself. So these are the sorts of things that we are hoping we have provoked in the lead up to the referendum. We certainly do hope, and someone criticized us for this, that we are promoting a yes campaign, but absolutely. If we didn't want you to vote for the CCJ, what's the point of having a campaign? We're not going to bring it forward. We're burying that as far down as possible as we can, you know. So it is just, as they say, it's all good. It's all good.
A point I think that needs to be made, a serious point, that there is actually nothing much for government to gain from going to the CCJ. The persons and the people who will gain are the average Grenadian. They are the ones who will gain from something like this. Now, if a Grenadian wants to file a constitutional motion against the government of Grenada for breach of their constitutional rights, and they've completed their issues with the High Court and the OECS Court of Appeal, then that average Grenadian who believes that they have a good case that has not been properly vented and dealt with cannot go to the Privy Council, you know. Well, they could go to the Privy Council if they have the money to go to the Privy Council. But they would be easier, as happened in Barbados with that professor when he brought the constitutional matter to the Caribbean Court of Justice. He was able to quickly and efficiently. I know there's one Grenadian right now that has a matter before the Privy Council, and it's been there for a year or two.
No, but 2-3 years.
2-3 years. Before the Privy Council, it has been there. And it still hasn't been dealt with yet. In fact, it's coming up next month. 23rd October, somewhere there. I think is the date. That's what I saw in the docket. So that one is coming up. But the average Grenadian is the one who will gain, not the government. Because if on the 7th of November, the vote is a no vote.
Yeah, what?
After the 6th, if on the 7th of November, the vote is a no vote. After the 6th, then you know what happens? The government continues as it is doing right now. You continue as you're doing right now. And the world continues as it continues right now. But when a case comes up and you can't go to your final court of appeal, you'll remember that on the 6th of November, boy, you know, I take my opportunity to do that away from myself.
I really go to the CCJ and vote for it, you know. Because look at it's affecting. You see, I think when it's staring us in the eye and so on, it affects us, then we see the importance of it. So I think the whole process of continuous educating our citizens, and so when it comes to that, is so important.
I'd just like to, before we run out of time, swing off topic for a short while for something I believe is of utmost importance. Just a release that has been issued a little earlier by NADMA. For those of you that would not have known it, Grenada and other Windward Islands are bracing themselves for some severe weather conditions on Thursday, that's tomorrow, as Tropical Storm Kirk is forecast to pass through the island chain. Now note, not through Grenada, through the island chain. I don't know what you go and say. Sheldon Scott say that the thing passing here and people run for the hills. No. All right? It is forecast to pass through the island chain. It does not say Grenada is not under tropical storm warning or hurricane warning or any such thing. All right? Currently, Barbados and St. Lucia are under tropical storm warning. St. Vincent and the Grenadines are under a tropical storm watch. Grenada is under clouds and sunshine.
Yes.
Right. Although Grenada is not expected to be directly impacted, forecasters at the Maurice Bishop International Airport are watching closely the rain bands associated, which can bring heavy thunder showers, resulting in flooding and landslides. A marine advisory will also be issued for operators. So expect some choppy seas. So it's a good thing we ain't going Caracol this week. You expect some choppy seas, expect some rainfall, expect a little thunder to clap, and a little bit of breeze. Don't get frightened if you see a little bit of breeze. We know anytime we see a little bit of breeze now, our mind goes back to 2004. No popo, just a little bit of breeze. Okay? Nice. Don't worry too much, eh? So preparedness, as usual, is always key. And folks, you know the areas that are prone to flooding, try to avoid them. Yeah, you know the areas that are prone to flooding. So when you realize, if it does come to that we have some significant amounts of rain, which may start in the morning, later tonight in the morning, and so if you realize there's a significant amount of rain and you live in a floodplain, you know you have to move. If you're in an area that you have to pass through an area that you know flood, like for me, I know me and passing through Woodlands. I know that because I know there's a specific area there that usually floods. So if you know that, be careful. And for those of you traveling on areas where they usually have rockfall now and again, you have to travel with caution. It does not mean panic. It don't mean go and buy out Mr. Andal. It don't mean go and buy out Mr. Foodland and Food Fair. Grenada we have a advisory for adverse weather conditions, severe weather conditions. So you don't get some rain, right? A lot of rain and some thunder showers and things. So if you hear the thunder clap and that, don't get too frightened, right? You know it was coming, okay? Nice. I just thought it was important that we say that before the general public say, head for the hills! Yeah. No, don't, be careful, all right? Nice. Just letting you all know. And please, listen to your radio stations for further information. All right, radio stations, I had to do that, so they'll give us an additional 10 minutes, right? Nice, thanks, right? Yes, ma'am. Oh boy, and we're heading to Caracol. The advisory committee is heading to Caracol next week.
Yes.
So we'll be having meetings with different people in Caracol. Has been having some meetings as well with different government ministries, I realize, and different areas, and so have been having little pocket meetings here and there with different.
Yes.
And then the main meetings, like what took place in St. Andrew recently, and I believe that there are some more that would soon be coming up. I tend to be afraid sometimes to take the schedule I have because it does change.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Change.
But I would say, Sheldon, that once you do get the confirmation of these meetings, that we can rely on you to definitely put the word out there.
Yes.
But we do have tentatively the 3rd to the 5th that we're going to be in Caracol, and then the week after that, on I believe it's the 10th. We should have a meeting in St. David's. So I'm putting out this information tentatively, so persons that know that they can probably make the St. David's meeting or so, you could listen out around the 10th, but definitely a few days before that. And then we want to be in St. Patrick's on the 17th of October. And on the 24th, or is it the 23rd, we are trying to see if we can be in St. Mark's Of course, you know, the 23rd, we have that upcoming Thanksgiving holiday on the 25th. So I know people may not necessarily be interested in coming and hearing about the CCJ on the eve of the holiday.
It's also the eve coming up to the vote itself.
So we have, so we have a 23rd date that we have put into our calendar. And then the following week as well, we plan to have another meeting at SAS, that's in St. Andrews. And for these meetings, we also hope to bring back some significant persons who can really share with us about the CCJ. We are certainly trying, I know, to bring in Miss Shanique Mary. So don't just take our word for it. Speak to someone who has experienced the CCJ live and direct, as they say, an ordinary person on the streets. And we also want to hope, we've invited, and we certainly hope that Sir Dennis will come back, as well as Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt of Dominica. Dominica is the first and only OECS country currently that has acceded to the final appellate level of the court. And hopefully maybe Ms. Prime Minister Mia Motley, will agree to join us again. You know, we are bringing in the prime ministers, and they have very, very tight schedules.
You have to be careful when you say something. We're wondering if Prime Minister Motley will be coming back home for another visit.
I said hopefully. Yeah.
We're wondering if she will be coming.
She'll be coming home.
For another
visit. Yes. So you know, it's really just important, as I say, stay tuned. We're going to be on the radio, and we're going to be out on doing a little walkabout as well, and just look out for, as I say, the CCJ posse, because we just really want to be around to answer any questions. As I say, take and no questions, a silly question, as you've said, Sheldon. And we really want you also to understand too that voting is important. We haven't really spoke about it too much, but the 6th of November, you must save this date, and you have to prepare yourself just like election day. Wake up early and ensure that you're at the polls in the same way with your ID cards, ready to cast your vote.
Yes, indeed.
And just a footnote, just to remind all eligible voters out there who are not yet registered, you have until Friday, the 28th, to do so, right? So that you can participate in the referendum on November 6th. It's not the end of registration, because remember, we have continuous registration, but for the November referendum, you have until the 28th, which is Friday, right, 5 p.m. I think, to get registered.
Watch now. I'll better do it by tomorrow.
Yes.
Oh boy. And as soon as I was about to go, I'm seeing an update on Kirk again from my friends at NADMA. So we're going to play that for you in a little while. We're going to play that one for you from NADMA, a little update on Kirk, but so much things taking place at the same time. We have Caribbean Court of Justice, which is so very important and feeds into everything else because it affects all aspects of our lives. In case you didn't know, yes, it does. And we're hoping that you will be able to join us again very soon, Mrs. Steele, to continue the discussion, because I didn't realize, but Wade hasn't told us that apparently there's a radio station in North Carolina, I think, that may be broadcasting Hard Talk as well. Okay, so outside of being broadcast in Brooklyn, I think we may be also being broadcast in North Carolina. Yeah, man.
That's good. So we can give them some other inspiration. Having going through that.
More radio stations, more power. Yeah, and watch now, the St. Lucian radio station need to start joining us again. We will talk to them.
And a bit of information there. The Caracou stint for the CCJ is the 3rd to the 5th.
Yes.
Yeah, that's someone is asking that.
Also, we'll be giving you some more information on the Peace Ark, that Chinese military medical vessel that will be visiting Grenada. We'll be giving you full information. Tune in tomorrow. I'll be giving you a lot of information in relation to that. We expect to have Dr. Fleming in, our psychologist, in with us tomorrow to speak about some various mental health issues and so as well tomorrow. But for those of you that usually go around the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, tomorrow mightn't be too much a good day to use there as one of your access points, because the body of Bishop Emeritus Sidney Charles will be taken to the cathedral for 9 a.m. tomorrow. There'll be a special mass for students of Catholic schools and Catholic students of Catholic schools. That will be starting from 10. So generally the traffic is going to be kind of troublesome and problematic in that area. The body will remain at the cathedral for regular midday mass and thereafter for viewing by the general public. At 5:30 tomorrow afternoon, a special vigil service will be held, and this service will include praying for the rosary, evening prayer service, office of the dead, and tributes. So on Friday, the actual funeral ceremony will take place starting at 9 a.m. So listen, because I say 9 a.m., you know seating in the cathedral is limited. You can't go for 9 a.m. and expect to get a seat, Popo. Go early, yeah? Okay, Popo? Go early. Find your park, preferably somewhere far from there, because you just kind of nearly scratch my car. Yeah, that parking up there, I mean, come on. So, all you watch, in fact, carpool. Call a friend who could call a friend and call a next friend, and 3 or 4 all you use a vehicle and come. Because this thing, it don't have parking, right? That is a problem. So, 9 a.m. tomorrow, and the Mass of Christian Burial will begin at 10. Do not be surprised if you realize that the bishop's casket is placed on the floor. It's one of his requests. Some people may sit on the floor and think they're disrespecting. He asked for his casket to be placed on the ground, on the floor. So it's not going to be on a trolley. So just to let you know, in case you're surprised, you're going to sit and you're surprised, and so no, this is what he asked for it to be placed that way. All right, so that'll be taking place tomorrow, just letting you all know. All right, nice. And we're going to end off again. Any final words on the Caribbean Court of Justice for the listeners?
Well, as I said, we are not there yet. November 6th, it is now September 26th. It's our last push. Stay tuned, stay focused, stay committed to educating yourself, and come out to vote on November 6th.
Yes, indeed. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for Hard Talk today. But before we go, we're going to play this little audio there for you. Let me see how long it is. Popo, listen, I think for me there earlier. Tell me how long. It's 3 minutes long? Okay, so we go end and we go just close off and then we're going to play it, right? Nice. Okay, Popo? Popo ain't me, no. Popo? Hey, Popo. You go play it, right? Nice, you go play it? All right, nice, Popo. Miss Clytie, thank you so very much. I got the package. Yeah, just letting you know. Miss Bernice, right, I got the package. So, folks, as we said, that's all the time we have for Hard Talk today. We'd like to once again thank Mrs. Michelle Steele for being in studio with us. Always a wonderful guest to have in studio with us and very informative. I know many of you are leaving highly blessed and favored and more intellectually capable to have a discussion in relation to the issue of the Caribbean Court of Justice. And we thank you all so very much for joining us this morning. Let me hear what's going on with Cook. Now, Cook, behave yourself. Let's hear what's going on with Cook right about now. Wait now, what's going on in the back there hearing yourself talking? You moved it. Nice.
Be careful, right. You have to distinct from the cook, which cook you're talking about.
Nah, you can't interfere with my next partner, Cook. Lead our partner, mine alone. You can't think. This Cook is a different Cook. All right, so, folks, that's all the time we have in everything to say and do. Do it safe and secure. I want to be speaking to and with you.
And not about you.
Thank you so very much.
An update from manager of the Med Services at the Maurice Bishop International Airport, Mr. Hubert White, on the pending tropical system, Cook.
Yes, Cook has developed into a tropical storm, or as you rightly said, redeveloped. So our latest position here is at the level this morning. The center of tropical storm Kirk is now located near latitude 12.1 degrees north, longitude 54.3 degrees west, and that is just about 500 miles east of Grenada. Kirk has now maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour, and of course we expect higher gusts. Very little change in strength is expected as it approaches the Windward Islands. Its present movement is 18 miles per hour, and that is towards the west, and later a northwesterly motion is expected, and that will be up to Friday. On this track, Kirk is expected to approach Barbados and the northern Windward Islands by Thursday afternoon. Tropical storm force winds extend outward up to 150 miles per hour from the center, and that means we may expect tropical storm force winds and storm conditions in the area north of Grenada, particularly our islands' dependency of Petit Martinique and Carriacou. Kirk is expected.
The CCJ will be a Caribbean court, reflective of Caribbean culture, Caribbean values, and everything Caribbean. I ask this question: which court do you think will adequately reflect the views of Caribbean people? To those who worry,
Grenada is about to embark on another historic mission of amending its constitution for the first time since its independence. From all indication, the push is for the changes to be made before the end of the year, 2 years after the first attempt failed.
I believe the CCJ is an important issue to take a second look at, and we're involving the same people, the community group, the legal professions, and other parties involved. And hopefully we'll have everyone playing a very united role in going forward, because if we do not work together, then clearly it's not necessarily going to pass. And I think it would be a tragedy of justice for this country and for the Caribbean. But I think it's about time that we stop having faith in everybody else but ourselves. All people, jurists have served regional and international institutions around with distinction. And it would be, to me, almost an insult to say to ourselves that we cannot be responsible for justice in our country.
2 years ago, 8 bills were tabled for constitution change. But this time around, the focus is on one which, if successful, will see the Caribbean Court of Justice replacing the London Privy Council as the final court of appeal. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, who was re-elected to office by a landslide victory on March 13, 2018, says he intends to play an active role this time around.
And the CCJ so far has demonstrated that it has stood out in terms of its decision-making process. And no one can say that the governments who are now the countries that are now part of the CCJ are getting decisions based on the those in political office. So in that sense, the people should be very happy that it's very independent judicial process, and I certainly, as a Grenadian and a Caribbean man, I certainly would want to support it. I would play a much more active role this time than I did the last time.
The bill seeking the constitutional change is already out. It's called the Constitution of Grenada Caribbean Court of Justice and Other Justice-Related Matters Amendment Bill 2018, one of the 8 attempted 2 years ago. It includes almost everything in the 2016 bill, but removed are the sections that speak about the code of conduct for public officials and the swearing allegiance to the country. Debate has continued over the years about doing away with the Privy Council and replacing it with the Caribbean Court of Justice system, the CCJ. The Privy Council in London and the CCJ based in Trinidad are both a final court of appeal that retries civil and criminal cases if the original ruling is thought not to be satisfactory. But proponents argue that the CCJ, formed and operated by the Caribbean people, would allow for a sense of independence and would make access to a fair trial much easier.
The arguments in favor of independence, the CCJ being an independent court, and in fact, the CCJ being one of the most independent courts in terms of structure and appointment of judges, not just in the region, but it is used as a model for other courts, particularly in relation to financing and in relation to the selection of judges. And that ultimately is the test.
There have been some recurring points of concerns about the idea of the CCJ as Grenada's final court of appeal, access, cost, and the likelihood of political interference.
What the CCJ has done and what has been approved with respect to the CCJ is the setting up of this independent trust fund that is managed by a board of trustees. And what is important about that board of trustees and the composition of that board of trustees is that you have no politicians at all on that board.
Former Minister of Legal Affairs Elvin Nimrod tabled the bill in Parliament in 2016. Newly appointed Minister of Legal Affairs Honorable Kindra Mathurin-Stewart says the implementation of the CCJ to Grenada will enhance the judiciary system of the trial and state.
For Grenada to have access to the CCJ as its final appellate court, that would mean for us here in Grenada that our people would have greater access to justice. As you know, with the Privy Council, persons had to travel far to England to access the Privy Council. But of course, the CCJ is right next door, and I believe, of course, with its location and its ease of access, that locals, ordinary people like me and you, would be able to have access to justice.
The Legal Affairs Minister says she believes there are competent experts here that are capable to execute the process.
I believe that we in the Caribbean are capable of creating and making our own jurisprudence. We don't have to depend on English judges and English folks to make jurisprudence for us. And I believe that we are well capable. We've had notable jurists and persons coming out or emanating from the Caribbean, CARICOM. And I believe that we possess that talent, we possess that experiences, and I believe that we are well poised to create our own jurisprudence. That in its sense alone to basically signal, of course, a greater independence for us as an independent nation of Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique.
In October of 2016, the Grenada Constitution reform was held, where citizens took to the polls to cast their ballots for or against the implementation of the CCJ as the final appellate court. Constitution reform process then was denied based on the outcome of the votes. Although CARICOM created the CCJ as a replacement for the Privy Council, it did not fully replicate the British system. Instead, it chose to copy certain practices while creating other divergent ones. Residents here say while they are willing to accept the change, there must be proper consultation on the subject.
Public education, and my first observation is that there are too many lessons, or if not lessons, too many chapters, or if not chapters, too many books to be learned within that space of time. The bills, the issues for the referendum, they are significant enough and far-reaching to have what I refer to as a limited time.
That of the CCJ, which country like Trinidad, Barbados, country which implemented that CCJ and they are ineffective already, they still go to the Privy Council for hearing in the jurisdiction. So we go into the CCJ now. We are neglecting the Privy Council and go to the CCJ. And them countries which are still implementing the CCJ, the Privy Council for a hearing. So how that go be looking when we neglect the Privy Council and go to the CCJ, and them countries which implemented the CCJ are still under the Privy Council.
During the swearing-in ceremony, after winning all 15 seats at the 2018 general election, Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell reassured the nation that consultation and education on the process will soon resume.
As each of us seeks to protect and save our children, we must look out also for our neighbors' children and to the broader issue of justice. And as it is also related to our independence and to our national identity, we must open up a dialogue again about joining the Caribbean Court of Justice.
The CCJ will be a Caribbean court, reflective of Caribbean culture, Caribbean values, and everything Caribbean. I ask this question: which court do you think will adequately reflect the views of Caribbean people to those who worry? Will it be the Privy Council, persons in Britain, persons who have never lived in the Caribbean, persons who don't share our values, persons who don't understand what we stand for and what values we uphold? Or would it be our people who have grown among us, who live among us, who attend the churches we attend, who attend the schools we attend, who are members of the soccer teams that we are members of? Who best do you think will reflect us?
It's about time. It's long overdue. We should be there because, get out of the British thing, and so we are all one Caribbean, and I think that will be binding us more together.
Yours is yours. Privy Council is not ours. No matter what we do, what we say, no matter what ties we had to England, this is the time to keep divesting ourselves of those strings that tie us unnecessarily.
There's nothing in this bill for any partisan political party. Nothing. There's only one thing in this. It's for the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, and for the Caribbean region as a whole.
Justice has to be accessible, affordable, and swift.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about me, this is about all of you and all of us. But I want to say one thing before we start. In 1979, a number of our young people did something that reverberated around the world. Something that it may not have lasted forever, but has. In a world of no cell phone and no internet and no fax machine or nothing like that, has established institutions that today we are very proud of. MNIB, National Insurance Board, and the airport. We should have been the first one signing on to the CCJ. We should have been. I don't know what happened, but given what we did then, we should have been the first. So keep that in the back of your minds with those of you who have all the excuses in the world as to why we shouldn't do it.
Grenada is about to embark on another historic mission of amending its constitution for the first time since its independence. From all indication, the push is for the changes to be made before the end of the year, 2 years after the first attempt failed.
We believe the CCJ is an important issue to take a second look at, and we're involving the same people, the community group, the legal professions, and other parties involved, and hopefully we'll have everyone playing a very united role in going forward, because if we do not work together, then clearly it's not necessarily going to pass, and I think it would be a tragedy of justice for this country and for the Caribbean. But I think it's about time that we stop having faith in everybody else but ourselves. All people, jurists have served regional and international institutions around with distinction, and it would be to me almost an insult to say to ourselves that we cannot be responsible for justice in our country.
2 years ago, 8 bills were tabled for constitution change. But this time around, the focus is on one which, if successful, will see the Caribbean Court of Justice replacing the London Privy Council as the final court of appeal. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, who was re-elected to office by a landslide victory on March 13, 2018, says he intends to play an active role this time around.
And the CCJ so far has demonstrated that it has stood out in terms of its decision-making process. And no one can say that the governments who are now the countries that are now part of the CCJ are getting decisions based on the govern those in political office. So in that sense, the people should be very happy that it's very independent judicial process, and I certainly, as a Grenadian and a Caribbean man, I certainly would want to support it. I would play a much more active role this time than I did the last time.
The bill seeking the constitutional change is already out. It's called the Constitution of Grenada Caribbean Court of Justice and Other Justice-Related Matters Amendment Bill 2018, one of the 8 attempted 2 years ago. It includes almost everything in the 2016 bill, but removed are the sections that speak about the code of conduct for public officials and the swearing allegiance to the country. Debate has continued over the years about doing away with the Privy Council and replacing it with the Caribbean Court of Justice system, the CCJ. The Privy Council in London and the CCJ based in Trinidad are both a final court of appeal that retries civil and criminal cases if the original ruling is thought not to be satisfactory. But proponents argue that the CCJ, formed and operated by the Caribbean people, would allow for a sense of independence and would make access to a fair trial much easier.
The arguments in favor of independence, the CCJ being an independent court, and in fact, the CCJ being one of the most independent courts in terms of structure and appointment of judges, not just in the region, but it is used as a model for other courts, particularly in relation to financing and in relation to the selection of judges. And that ultimately is the test.
There have been some recurring points of concerns about the idea of the CCJ as Grenada's final court of appeal, access, cost, and the likelihood of political interference.
What the CCJ has done and what has been approved with respect to the CCJ is the setting up of this independent trust fund that is managed by a board of trustees. And what is important about that board of trustees and the composition of that board of trustees is that you have no politicians at all on that board.
Former Minister of Legal Affairs Elvin Nimrod tabled the bill in Parliament in 2016. Newly appointed Minister of Legal Affairs Honorable Kindra Mathurin-Stewart says the implementation of the CCJ to Grenada will enhance the judiciary system of the trial and state.
For Grenada to have access to the CCJ as its final appellate court, that would mean for us here in Grenada that our people would have greater access to justice. As you know, with the Privy Council, persons had to travel far to England to access the Privy Council. But of course, the CCJ is right next door, and I believe, of course, with its location and its ease of access, that locals, ordinary people like me and you, would be able to have access to justice.
The Legal Affairs Minister says she believes there are competent experts here that are capable to execute the process.
I believe that we in the Caribbean are capable of creating and making our own jurisprudence. We don't have to depend on English judges and English folks to make jurisprudence for us. And I believe that we are well capable. We've had notable jurists and persons coming out or emanating from the Caribbean, CARICOM. And I believe that we possess that talent, we possess that experiences, and I believe that we are well poised to create our own jurisprudence. That in its sense alone too would basically signal, of course, a greater independence for us as an independent nation of Grenada, CARICOM and PTT Martinique.
In October of 2016, the Grenada Constitution reform was held, where citizens took to the polls to cast their ballots for or against the implementation of the CCJ as the final appellate court. Constitution reform process then was denied based on the outcome of the votes. Although CARICOM created the CCJ as a replacement for the Privy Council, it did not fully replicate the British system. Instead, it chose to copy certain practices while creating other divergent ones. Residents here say while they are willing to accept the change, there must be proper consultation on the subject.
Public education, and my first observation is that there are too many lessons, or if not lessons, too many chapters, or if not chapters, too many books to be learned within that space of time. The bills, the issues for the referendum, they are significant enough and far-reaching to have what I refer to as a limited time.
That of the CCJ, which country like Trinidad, Barbados, country which implemented that CCJ and they are ineffective already, they still go to the Privy Council for hearing in the jurisdiction. So we go into the CCJ now. We are neglecting the Privy Council and go to the CCJ. And them countries which are still implementing the CCJ, the Privy Council for hearing. So how that go be look at when we neglect the Privy Council and go to the CCJ, and them countries which implemented the CCJ are still under the Privy Council.
During the swearing-in ceremony, after winning all 15 seats at the 2018 general election, Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell reassured the nation that consultation and education on the process will soon resume.
As each of us seeks to protect and save our children, we must look out also for our neighbors' children and to the broader issue of justice. And as it is also related to our independence and to our national identity, we must open up a dialogue again about joining the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Package of incentives being considered to entice Carnival cruise lines to come to Grenada in the summer months. Details to this story and more coming up in the National Report. Welcome back with the details to the news for today, Tuesday, September 25th. I am Wendy Edmond. A reduction in the head tax paid by cruise lines is one of the incentives being considered as the Ministry of Tourism and the Civil Aviation seeks to woo more calls to Grenada by the Carnival Cruise Lines. A high-level delegation headed by President and the CEO of Carnival Corporation, Arnold Donnell, visited Grenada recently, during which discussions were held on how to entice the cruise line to come this far south. Minister for Tourism and the Civil Aviation, Dr. Clarice Modeste Cohen, says government has welcomed the initiative and will work with stakeholders to ensure that Carnival cruise lines can include Grenada on their schedule year-round. While reducing the head tax is on the table, the environmental levy charged to cruise ships is not part of the deal under consideration.
The head tax. For each person who comes, the port charges a certain amount. So the port officials have been looking at how they can reduce a bit on it. We believe that with what we had before and the numbers we saw coming, the interest we see with the cruise lines themselves to engage with us more than they have done before, and the aggressive marketing that we're doing, we have spent more money for marketing in the past year than we've ever done before. And the enthusiasm within the Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of GTA, and also Forestry to work with us to improve Granite Tank, to do other things. And we believe that that could work in such a way that what we lose on the per head, we can gain it in the numbers that we see.
Former Tourism Minister Honorable Brenda Hood is heading a delegation involving representatives from the Grenada Tourism Authority and the Ports Authority as part of the process. Minister Modeste Cohen says the plan is to see a growth in numbers.
What we are trying to do is to give them an offer, make them an offer that they can't refuse. They take water, they take other things, and especially the head tax, we are looking at it because we have to give them something to make them come this far south.
For the last winter tourist season, Carnival Cruise Lines brought 150,000 passengers to Grenada. That number increased this year to 163,309 passengers. Onto this other story, a local hotelier is optimistic that the tourism sector will receive a big boost from the influx of visitors to the island's shores for the rest of the 2018-2019 season. Owner and manager of the True Blue Bay Resort, Ross Sheldon, says this year has been busy for hoteliers and other stakeholders and anticipates more activities as the 2019 season draws closer. He says Grenada will reap all the rewards of the authorities and stakeholders' efforts to develop the tourism product. According to Sheldon, this boost to the tourism product augurs well for the growth and development in marketing the island as a tourism destination. He called for more flights from the UK market.
2018 has been a very good year for the tourism sector, and 2019 looks equally buoyant at the moment. You know, you can never tell exactly what's going to happen with world economies, but so one doesn't want to be too positive, but certainly the outlook currently is excellent. The flight situation is as good as it's ever been. We could certainly do with some more flights coming out of the UK. There's still the same flights as we had several years ago, but the US and Canada are very well served at the moment. Yeah, it's looking like a very buoyant season. I think we also have to keep in mind that 2018 we got a little bit of a bonus because some of the northern islands had been damaged by the hurricanes, and so some people that would have gone there maybe came down here. But I think that has given us a real good shot in the arm, and people are aware of Grenada and the wonderful tourism product that we have to offer.
From March 2018, the Grenada Tourism Authority and the Ministry of Tourism have been working to develop the cruise guest experience through customer service training for vendors, erection of signage, and training in basic languages for workers within the sector. As of August 2018, the cruise industry in Grenada has grown by 26.75% year on year, and tourism officials are expecting this growth to continue. This is the National Report. More news after the break.
The house was shaking. Then started the story here, babe. Crack, and the roof had gone.
Man, I was so scared, I nearly wet myself.
Only those who have lived it can truly understand the devastating fury of a hurricane's wind.
The house across the road just get up and roll over.
Hurricane force wind. It's a hazard. Hazards. Take control. Reduce your loss. You can hurricane-proof your home. For example, make your roof more wind-resistant by using screws instead of nails in its construction. Find out more about hurricane force winds and other hazards at your local disaster office. A message from the National Disaster Management Agency and SEDERA.
Welcome back. Grenada will host a one-day workshop on Wednesday to review and finalize this country's draft National Occupational Safety and Health Policy. Mr. Ariel Pino, the ILO Specialist for Social Protection and Occupational Safety and Health, will outline the way forward at the consultation, which takes place at the Grenada Trade Center Annex. The aim is to build a modern and dynamic occupational health and safety system which ensures that safe and healthy workplaces are provided to all workers. The first consultation on this policy was held in November of 2016. Heavy reliance on toxic chemicals is being replaced by a more appealing alternative called integrated pest management. It is a major focus of Pesticides Awareness Week, being observed from September 23rd to the 29th. We hear more in this Jerry Malcolm report.
Ensuring the production of safe food is a key priority of government, as well as food producers, handlers, and others involved along the food value chain. Every year, the world observes Pesticides Awareness Week, focusing primarily on the safe use of chemicals as a means of controlling pests and diseases in agriculture and for public health. This year, the observation is from September 23rd to 29th. But already, the heavy reliance on toxic chemicals has been given way to a more appealing alternative called integrated pest management, with emphasis on the old cultural practices. Case in point, the farm of Mr. Patrick Simmons, where the Ministry of Agriculture's Pest Management Unit has been hard at work with great results.
When Mr. Simmons contacted us and he said he was having problems with his soursop, they were not bearing at all. There was no fruits, and he was even contemplating cutting them down because he was not getting anything from them. And we stepped in and I said, listen, let me try something, you know. So we came in, we did about 2 trials. We had a new chemical that we was doing some little studies on. That was Zampro. It's a new fungicide that was brought in by Renick and Thompson. So we did about 2 trials with the guys on the spray team, and then I encouraged him to prune. So even those at the bottom that didn't have any fruits on them, he started pruning them. So we pruned some, we sprayed some of them, and we leave the rest like that. And when he observed those that were pruned and how they started reacting, he decided he's going to prune everything. Because even after he pruned, those that was not sprayed also started fruiting and started flowering. So he realized that the pruning was a key aspect of the whole.
After we did some comparative analysis in terms of those that were treated and those that remained untreated and those that were pruned, what I observed in a very short period of time is that those that were treated, we saw some little movements in terms of the flowering. But those that were pruned, not only the flooring we noticed, but we also noticed too that the entire environment in terms of the plant itself changed.
And that's the National Report for today, Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. On behalf of all of us in the newsroom, I am Wendy Edmond, thanking you for viewing.